You make $58,000 a year. Maybe it's $72,000. Maybe it's $91,000. The exact number doesn't matter. The feeling is exactly the same. You're doing everything you were told to do. You show up to work, you pay your bills on time, you try to be responsible. Yet every single month ends almost exactly like the one before it. Not dramatically worse. Not catastrophically behind. Just stuck. Quietly, stubbornly, inexplicably stuck. You're not out here buying things you cannot afford. You're not gambling. You're not making obviously stupid decisions with your money. You track your spending sometimes. You have a savings account. You contributed to your 401k last year, at least for most of it. By every conventional measure, you are a financially responsible adult who is doing approximately the right things. And yet, the number does not move. The gap between what you earn and what you actually accumulate sits there every month, quiet, stubborn, and refusing to explain itself. And somewhere in the back of your mind, underneath the daily noise of work and life, there is a question you keep almost asking, and then not asking, because you're not entirely sure you want to hear the answer. Why is it not adding up? Here is the answer. Is not your salary. Is not your city. It is not the economy, or the interest rates, or the hand you were dealt, or the timing, or any of the external forces that are genuinely real and genuinely difficult. The reason is 7 specific behaviors. 7 quiet refusals that are keeping your financial trajectory exactly where it is, regardless of how much more you earn, regardless of how much more content you consume, regardless of how many more articles you read and nod along to, and then close without changing anything. Most people stay broke not because they lack information. They stay broke because knowing and doing are 2 completely different skills. And the second one requires something the first one never did. This is not a list of things you have never heard of. This is a serious, honest examination of 7 things you already know, and exactly why you're still not doing them. Number 1, they refuse to see their spending as a voting system. Every dollar you spend is a vote, not a metaphor, an actual functional vote cast for a specific version of your future. The $340 a month in subscriptions you forgot you had is a vote. The $180 dinner you put on a card you are already carrying a balance on is a vote. The car payment that consumes 18% of your take-home income is a vote. Each one individually feels like a small, isolated decision. Collectively, they are a complete and honest statement about what you actually value. The person building wealth quietly beside you is not more disciplined in some abstract motivational sense. They have simply made a deep, practical, and emotional connection between today's dollar and tomorrow's options. Between the vote cast now and the freedom or the captivity it purchases later. The reason most people refuse to see their spending this way is not stupidity. It is that seeing it this way requires taking full responsibility for your current financial position. And full responsibility is deeply uncomfortable. It is easier to blame your salary, your city, your student loans, or your circumstances than to sit honestly with the reality that the dollars leaving your account every month are leaving with your permission, one by one, vote by vote. Most people do not sit with that. They keep spending and keep feeling vaguely behind. The shift happens when you stop reading your bank statement as a record of what happened and start reading it as a document of what you chose. The people who change their trajectory read it as the second one. Number 2, they refuse to get uncomfortable with delay. There is a version of financial discipline that looks like sacrifice from the outside and feels like strategy from the inside. The person driving the 2014 Honda while their colleagues lease new cars every 3 years is not suffering. They have made a calculation most people refuse to make, that the difference between what they drive and what they could drive is worth exactly the gap it creates in their net worth. That gap is real. It compounds. Over a decade, it becomes the difference between options and obligations. The human brain is not wired for delayed gratification at scale. It is wired for now. The reward that arrives today registers as more valuable than the reward that arrives in 10 years, even when the math says otherwise. This is not a character flaw. It is a feature of a brain that kept your ancestors alive. But that same feature is quietly destroying the financial future of modern people. The people who build wealth are not superhuman. They have learned to make the future feel real today, real in the way that actually changes behavior. When the future feels real, delay becomes tolerable. When the future stays abstract, The immediate reward wins every single time. Most people never make their future feel real enough to compete with the present. That is not a willpower problem. It is an imagination problem. And imagination can be deliberately trained. Number 3, they refuse to treat their income like a business treats revenue. If you walked into a business that spent 100% of its revenue on operating expenses and set nothing aside for investment or growth, you would immediately recognize it as a business that is going to fail. Yet most people run their household finances exactly like that failing business. Salary comes in, lifestyle expands to meet it. The month ends at 0 or worse. Raises come, spending rises, margin stays 0. The machine produces nothing because everything it generates is immediately consumed by the life built around receiving it. The shift is treating your income the way a business treats revenue. Revenue is not profit. Revenue is the raw material from which profit is extracted through intentional allocation. What remains after necessary expenses, that is what builds. That is what compounds. That is what eventually produces income that does not require your presence to arrive. Most people resist this because implementing it requires defining what your actual necessary expenses are, and that definition is uncomfortable. It reveals how much of the spending is not necessary at all. It is chosen. It is habitual. It is social. It is emotional. Do it anyway. Number 4, they refuse to have the honest conversation with themselves about risk. Most people believe they are avoiding risk when they keep their money in a savings account. They are wrong in a way that costs them decades of wealth building. Inflation is risk. Keeping $20,000 in a savings account earning 0.5% while inflation runs at 4% is a decision to lose purchasing power at approximately 3.5% per year. The number in the account does not change. That is the trap. Slow, invisible erosion compounding in the wrong direction. The honest conversation most people refuse to have is this: every financial decision carries risk. The question is never whether to take risk. The question is which risks are worth taking consciously versus unconsciously, because the alternative produces less anxiety today. The person investing $500 a month in a diversified index fund is taking risk and being compensated for it. The person keeping it in savings is also taking risk: inflation risk, opportunity cost risk, the risk of arriving at 65 with a number that looks safe but does not provide freedom. Builders choose risks based on math and time horizon. Most people choose the option that produces less anxiety and pay for it for decades. Number 5, they refuse to invest in the understanding of money itself. There is an entire industry built on financial ignorance. Banks, credit cards, car dealerships, lenders, they all profit from a gap. The barrier is not access to information. The barrier is the quiet refusal to treat financial understanding as a skill worth developing deliberately. Most people treat financial literacy as something that either happened to you or it didn't. Builders treat it as an acquirable skill. They study consistently. They understand expense ratios, how interest works in both directions, and they make decisions from understanding instead of anxiety and hope. You can learn this. Is not complicated, is unfamiliar, and unfamiliar dissolves with effort. Number 6, they refuse to separate their identity from their spending. This is the hardest one. For most people, the car is not transportation. The apartment is not shelter. The clothes are not warmth. These things have become tied to identity, external signals of who you are and where you belong. When spending is identity, cutting the spending feels like cutting part of yourself. You cannot out-spreadsheet an identity crisis. The builder does the uncomfortable, deliberate work of decoupling the two. They decide their worth as a person is not readable in their possessions. That decoupling is not fast and not comfortable, but it is some of the most important financial work you can do. Number 7, they refuse to start before they feel ready. There is a version of preparation that is actually avoidance with better branding. 18 months researching before investing. 3 years with a Roth IRA tab open but never funded. Waiting until you feel ready guarantees you never start. Readiness does not precede action. It follows it. You invest imperfectly with a small amount that feels meaningless, and then competence and confidence grow through experience. Every month of delay has a permanent cost in compounding you can never recover. Builders start small and imperfect. They let competence follow action. You already knew most of this. That is not a criticism. That is the entire point of this video. The information was never the barrier. The barrier is the quiet gap between knowing and doing. That gap is where financial trajectories are decided, not in dramatic moments, but in the ordinary ones. In the vote cast with the next dollar, in the delay accepted or refused, in the identity examined or protected, in the start made imperfectly or postponed indefinitely. The people who build wealth are not the ones who had the best information. They are the ones who acted on adequate information before they felt fully prepared. They started anyway. You have adequate information now. What happens next is no longer a knowledge question, it is a decision question, and that decision belongs entirely to you. If this video shifted something, if it felt like recognition, subscribe for the next conversation. We're going deeper into the specific unglamorous steps that actually change the math. You do not want to miss it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. The person who is good at their job and still feels stuck. They know who they are. See you in the next one.